Okay, we have to talk about this Immaculate Constellation thing that's been filling the UFO headlines lately. Oops, I shouldn't have said that name out loud. I think that's supposed to put me on a list or something. If eyes made sounds, you would have just heard the massive eye rolling I just did. I think I rolled them a little too hard. That kind of hurt.
Is it UFO or UAP? The government's confusing me. The experts make it complicated. Lack of answers has me jaded. UFO, I don't know. UAP, yeah, I guess so. Searching for answers, where to begin. Round and round in circles again. Thunderstruck by mass confusion. Is it fact or fiction? Convolution. UFO, UAP, which is right idiomatically. Just my luck now, I'm stuck. Scratch my head and say, yeah, what the fuck? UFO or UAP, it's all so confusing to me. Beyond frustrated, damn my luck. Pondering insane thoughts, what the fuck?
Hello, citizens, and welcome to UFO, UAP, WTF. I'm your host, Jason McClellan, and together we'll be exploring the fascinating, enigmatic, and frustrating subject of UFOs. You may have heard some minor buzz in UFO circles lately about Immaculate Constellation, an alleged unacknowledged special access program at the Pentagon. You might remember we briefly mentioned this thing back in November of 2024 after it was discussed during a joint congressional UFO hearing with the embarrassing and sensational title, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Exposing the Truth. It was at this hearing that filmmaker Jeremy Corbell submitted the Immaculate Constellation document for the congressional record, and it was Representative Nancy Mace's ridiculous statement about this document that I alluded to in the show's opening.
And Representative Luna just told me if I say Immaculate Constellation, I'll be on some list. Maybe a FISA warrant, so come at me, bro, I guess. But
this program was reportedly established after the Pentagon's OSAP/ATIP UFO program was revealed to the public by former intelligence official Luis Elizondo in 2017. And the focus of Immaculate Constellation was supposedly the collection of imagery intelligence on UFOs. So, like I said, this document was submitted to Congress in 2024. So why are we talking about it today? Well, Jeremy Corbell, whom I just mentioned as the individual responsible for providing this document to Congress, recently revealed the true source of this document on his podcast Weaponized, which he hosts with journalist George Knapp. This individual being billed as a UFO whistleblower is Matthew Brown. At least that's the name he's using in the interview. There hasn't been any verification provided yet to substantiate this guy's role as a former Department of Defense and State Department analyst, let alone his name. But for the sake of our conversation today, the pseudonym's cool and we'll assume his work history is as he's claimed. During the interview, Brown explains that he was doing a boring computer file cleanup project when he came across a file that caught his attention. This is the file that ignited the flame, sending him on his UFO whistleblower path. He says the file included UFO photos, including a triangle UFO over Russian intelligence vessels, but with minimal details. And the file even contained a photo of none other than Lou Elizondo, and credited him with creating the Immaculate Constellation Special Access Program. As for the specifics of this program, well, those aren't really clear. Unfortunately, as with most grand claims made in the UFO field related to alleged government involvement with UFOs and a government UFO cover-up, Brown says he essentially made assumptions, piecing things together from the scant details in the document.
So in the product itself, you had to piece together the mission by reading the whole thing and kind of putting together the parts. It never spelled out fully, like as it should, the mission of the SAP.
That, to me, is a pretty common red flag in instances like this. But the issues with this document don't stop there. In fact, they began with the title page of the document.
Yeah, so it was labeled 2018 Shriver Wargame. Might have been brief or something else, but that's it. There's nothing about that screams, it's a very interesting thing. In fact, usually a lot of wargame briefs are pretty boring.
Now, if the Shriver War Games sound familiar, that could be because these have been taking place for years, or it could be because UFO whistleblower David Grush has been a Shriver War Game advisor, as he indicated on his resume submitted to Congress before his congressional testimony back in 2023. For some quick background, these war games were led by the Air Force Space Command, which is now the U.S. Space Force, and they are exercises designed to explore critical space issues, test new tactics and strategies, and predict trends in future conflicts. They also aim to improve cooperation and interoperability between different nations and agencies. Specifically looking at the 2018 Shriver War game, the one mentioned in this Immaculate Constellation document, this event involved a scenario depicting a theoretical, quote, pure space and cyberspace competitor seeking to achieve strategic goals by exploiting those domains. It included a global scenario with the focus of effort toward the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command Area of Responsibility, end quote. Why am I bothering to mention this detail about the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command Area of Responsibility? It just so happens that this is conveniently where the Immaculate Constellation document showed this alleged UFO incident occurred.
Is it like in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, it's off the coast of Kamchatka, as I recall, in the Pacific Ocean.
As we discussed, the Shriver War Games are specifically executed to think about potential future threats, scenarios, etc. that militaries might have to face someday. The 2018 War Game was set in the year 2028. So far, everything we've heard publicly about this Immaculate Constellation document sounds completely in line or within the scope of the Shriver War Games. So what additional information led Matthew Brown to believe that he stumbled onto some real unacknowledged special access program? Well, those details are pretty scant at this point, but one of those things is apparently another assumption made by Brown related to the reaction of superiors when he brought this file to their attention. The first simply dismissed his assumption that this was some important secret, improperly labeled file and instructed him to delete it. Brown didn't feel he was being taken seriously, so he went to his boss's boss's boss and tried again. He was redirected to the Special Access Program Control Officer, who literally laughed when he saw what the content was and informed Brown that someone must be pulling a joke on him. But it didn't stop there. Again, Brown reportedly had additional sources that contributed to his Immaculate Constellation document delivered to Congress. The document states that it is the result of a, quote, multi-year internal investigation, end quote. But as we learned in his recent interview on Weaponized, that multi-year internal investigation, as cool and official as that sounds, was simply him continuing to poke around government systems looking for things that might support his established belief.
So I basically conducted my own amateur all-source analysis of what the U.S. government, specifically the DoD, because that's what I had access to, knew about UAPs, and I collected that information and sought out a way to go to Congress because they asked and provided amnesty for whistleblowers. If they did not want that, they should not have written that into a law.
I really don't know what to make of this new whistleblower. Frankly, he sounds like so many so-called whistleblowers we've heard from recently and throughout UFO history. That is, some random person who had a government job, they came across, or intentionally went fishing for, something that appeared strange to them, and when bringing attention to said seemingly strange thing didn't elicit the type of reaction they were hoping for, they interpret that as proof of a cover-up. Or if they report something and they don't ever hear anything more about the issue or receive some type of update or follow-up, again, it's viewed as a cover-up and validation of their assumptions. The Immaculate Constellation document provided to Congress ends with two Latin phrases that translate to knowledge tested by fire and truth through faith. These are associated with the U.S. Army's 902nd Military Intelligence Group. Interestingly, this group was one of Luis Elizondo's earliest posts, as he points out in his book, Imminent Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs. By the way, have you looked at Elizondo's book on Amazon lately? What's up with the needy, attention-hungry games with the title? Imminent Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, written by the former head of the Pentagon program investigating UAPs, featured on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. For a guy who claims he doesn't like the spotlight and he's not out for attention, that's pretty odd. Anyway, back to Matthew Brown. In all fairness, we're simply operating with the limited publicly available details we have to work with. As objective researchers, we keep open minds, assess information as it's presented to us, and adjust and adapt our assessments. But because being responsibly skeptical when it comes to this complicated topic is a necessity for any objective researcher, it's always important to note potential red flags. Slim details, things based on assumption, outside influences, potential agendas, conflicting information, and so on. One more thing I'll highlight that could be perfectly innocent but seems odd is another convenient, incestual connection with this story. We already talked about the Lou Elizondo tie-ins, but David Grush is wrapped up in this too. We pointed out that Grush was an advisor to the Shriver War Games that were mentioned in the Immaculate Constellation file, but it was also Grush who referred Matthew Brown to Jeremy Corbell. I'm sure Matthew Brown has much more evidence to prove his assertions beyond reading between the lines and making assumptions about things outside his knowledge and taken out of context. Time will tell. Or maybe it won't. But I do encourage you to listen to the full interviews on the Weaponized podcast so you have all the details available to form your own opinion. But that, my friends, concludes our episode for today. As you pursue your UFO research, do what works for you, but consider my 5 recommendations to guide your UFO research quest. Always treat the UFO subject with the cautious and responsible skepticism it deserves. Question everything. Have the courage to form your own opinions. Keep truth as the focus of your quest, even if the truth conflicts with your opinions, and be open to modifying those opinions as you consider new information. And lastly, don't be a dick. If you're interested in keeping up to date with what's happening in the world of UFOs, check out our free weekly newsletter that covers the latest UFO-related news, research, events, and more. You can subscribe at UFO-UAP-WTF.com. I'm Jason McClellan. Thanks for hanging out today. Join me again next time as we try to figure out together what the f*** is up with these UFOs.
UFO